cost of experience is time. There is no other way to buy it. Years and work are its investment. Practical wisdom can be its reward. That's sometimes a hard lesson for a younger man to learn. He is more geared to youth than to age. His frame of mind calls on him to think young, talk young, and dress young. With such a mental attitude, older persons begin to take a back seat, and with them goes that irreplaceable investment of time. How true this is seen at the Goodman Printing Company, where Pete Garbowski, a 50-year man in printing, is being welcomed back to work.
Hey, welcome back.
You're looking great, Pete.
How are you, Pete?
Boy, can't keep a good man down. Nice to have you back.
Here, hold it, everybody. Wait a minute. Let's have Pete say a word or two. How does it feel to be back to work after a month of bed rest, Pete?
Rest is fine, but when you aren't tired anymore, it's good to get back to work.
Well, we've been keeping your press warm for you, Pete. I didn't think sciatica would keep you down forever.
Not forever, Joe. Just a month, and that's as close as I want to come to forever.
Joe's had me get your vertical ready for you. It almost looks like a new one now.
But I don't think anybody can come up to the way you keep a press, Pete.
That's what everybody says, Pete. I sure am glad we have you back again.
Thanks, everybody. All your visits and cards.
Well, your locker's waiting for you, and whenever you want to get the old vertical going again, it's waiting for you.
Say, Chuck, why don't you go ahead and take Pete on over to his press? I can see he's getting impatient to get back to work.
Sure thing, Mr. Goodman. Come on, Pete, let's go.
Joe, can I see you in my office a minute before you go into work?
All right, Harry.
Sit down, Joe.
Thanks, Harry.
Say, Joe, what do you really think about Pete Garbowski coming back to work? I mean, well, he's been out for a month sick, and he's sure not getting any younger.
Are you trying to say that Pete's too old and sick to hold down his job with Goodman Printing?
Well, not exactly. I'm wondering, that's all. He's eligible for retirement, you know. I thought you might have some ideas.
Well, personally, I don't think any substitute for his experience is going to be found too quickly. Do you realize he's been running presses since he was 15 years old?
Yes, I know, Joe. And neither of us were born when he started. But the point is, what can he do now? And with sciatica, he could be out of work again tomorrow.
Well, it's your decision, Harry. Remember, though, you and I both know we get a lot fewer mistakes and higher efficiency and more consistent quality out of him than anybody else in the plant.
That was in the past. What about now, Joe?
Well, what about now, Harry? He was doing all right before he got sick. If I'd been sick, would you say the same thing, or would you say that...
That's different altogether. I can figure when you get well, you're well for good. But with Pete, well, I'm not so sure.
Well, just the same, I don't think it would hurt at all to keep him on and see how he does. He really wants to work, you know, and I can foresee a lot sacrificed if we let him go.
Oh, I guess so. But still, I'll keep in mind what you said. I'm not going to say no yet, but I'm not going to say yes either.
Okay, Harry. Was there anything else you had in mind?
No, that's all.
Okay, I'd better get out to the plant then.
All right, thanks, Joe. I'll see you later.
All right, Harry.
Joe, will you check this register for approval?
Sure, Chuck. Well, it looks pretty good, but I'd adjust the blue before running it.
Okay, Chief. Joe?
Yes, Chuck. Something else?
Yeah, it's about Pete. Funniest thing, he got back to his press and started puttering around it like he didn't know what he was doing. I told him I had everything set up ready to go. Well, he just acted like he didn't know how to start it up. Kind of makes you think he was getting senile or something.
Well, that's a pretty harsh thing to say.
Well, sciatica is pretty tough. It could hurt anybody's thinking. And when you're getting to be that old, don't you think, Joe?
Oh, I don't know, Chuck. It seems to me he's running his press well enough now. After all, Pete's a careful printer. He's been away from his press for a month. Maybe he was just inspecting it before pushing that start button.
Well, I don't know what for. I told him I had it all checked out, ready to go.
I don't know, Chuck. I always like to think of what a Bible proverb says. The splendor of old men is their gray-headedness.
What do you mean, Joe? Just because you have gray hair, that doesn't make you any smarter than everybody else.
No, that's not the idea. A man that's lived longer naturally has experience. If he uses it wisely, you could call his gray hairs a splendor, and a young man can learn from it.
Okay, but I still say you'd better keep an eye on Pete for his own sake.
Say, Pete, how are you getting home tonight?
Take the bus as usual. Why?
Well, I thought you might want to ride along with me. I'm going by that way.
You don't have to do that, Joe. I can make my own way.
Well, I know you can, but it's been a while since we've had a chance to talk any.
Okay, Joe. If you insist, I'm not going to turn you down.
So, how did you find your first day back at work?
A little exciting. What with everyone there to welcome me back. Then there was the sound of the presses again after a month of bed quiet.
Oh, I'd think you would prefer the quiet.
Me? Not me, Joe. When you've been around the presses as long as I have, that sound is part of you.
But what about the rest?
That's great the first day. But you take a workhorse like me out of harness too long, he starts chafing to get back in. I should have been back.
Well, why do you say that?
Just an example. Take that lockup job young Chuck Nelson was supposed to have done for me this morning. For some reason, I don't know why, maybe the kid was excited about me coming back. I don't know. Anyway, he didn't tighten up the coins enough. It looked like one could have popped out as soon as the press started running. And you know what that would have done if I'd have pressed the start button without checking it out. Poof! One press gone. Well, I did something like it myself once, so I shouldn't kick.
You know, Pete, that makes me think of the first part of something I told Chuck earlier today.
What did you say?
That was a Bible proverb. The beauty of young men is their power, and the splendor of old men is their gray-headedness. I only mentioned the latter part, though.
So Chuck was supposed to have locked up the press like a strong young man, but I checked out my machine like a gray-headed old man.
Well, that wasn't exactly the way I pictured it, but that's what I had in mind.
Still, it doesn't hurt to have the younger men around, Joe. Sometimes they make up quite a bit for the energy I just don't have anymore. Besides, somebody has to take over sooner or later.
Well, it'll take some to take over from you, Pete.
Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate that. Thanks for the ride, too.
Any time, Pete. I'll see you tomorrow.
Good morning, Joe.
Well, good morning, Helen.
Mr. Goodman got in early this morning. Chuck Nelson was talking to him about something, and then they went into the office.
Oh, yes?
So Mr. Goodman said to have you come in as soon as you arrived.
Okay, Helen.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Chuck. Good morning, Harry.
Good morning. Helen tell you I wanted to see you?
Yes, you did.
Sit down, Joe. Chuck was just telling me about something.
Oh? What did he tell you?
It's about Pete Garbowski. It seems that yesterday he was lost and befuddled at his press. It appeared like he was wandering around it, almost like he was afraid to start it up. You know, Joe, when you're in the business as long as Pete, you don't go around getting lost at your machine.
Well, it's not much to go on, Harry.
But I see symptoms of something much worse, Joe.
Well, did you talk to Pete about it?
No, I didn't. Why should I? I can see what's going on.
Well, if you remember, yesterday I talked about the idea of experience, and I mentioned the same thing to Chuck.
What I'm thinking about is for Pete's good, as well as for the company. It's about time he retired. There's a pension plan and the Social Security program for taking care of him. With 50 years of work behind him, he can use a rest.
Well, I don't want to disagree with you, Harry, but I talked to Pete yesterday about the press incident. You know that he always has a habit of checking over his press very carefully before starting it up.
Yes, but Chuck said he never saw him treat the press like that before.
Well, maybe because Chuck didn't realize that he hadn't tightened up the coins properly.
What? Loose coins on the form? Why, that's as careless
Well,
as...
that was the whole problem with Pete looking lost around his press. He was handling routine adjustments and maintenance that Chuck doesn't even know about yet.
Nelson's a good man, though. Plenty of possibilities.
Well, there's the point, Harry. It's the difference between possibilities and proven experience.
Granted. But there does come a time when a man just is not meant to work anymore. I think this is about the time for Pete.
Well, Harry, you know that I believe the Bible very deeply, and I think it has some excellent counsel about older persons.
Look, Joe, I don't disagree with the Bible, but still, well, go ahead. What does it say?
Well, let's take your idea that there comes a time when man is not supposed to work anymore. Now, the Bible says the first thing that man was made to do was to care for and cultivate the earth. He was made to work.
But until a certain age, Joe.
Oh, let me give you a few examples, Harry, right in the Bible. Now, there was a man named Caleb. The Bible says that when he was 85, he led an army in the conquest of a whole country.
Oh, people lived longer in those days.
Oh, not really. Moses said in one of his Psalms that a man's life was limited to an average of 70 to 80 years. Now, the point is, God made man to do constructive work. Now, you can see from the way Pete looked yesterday, he was really happy to be back. As long as he is physically able to do the work, he should be able to do it.
That's fine, but we're not running a charity house.
It's not giving something for nothing, Harry. Pete is contributing his share. If he hadn't been able to spot just that one problem yesterday, we could have run into a major repair expense. It was purely a matter of routine and experience.
You have a strong point there. But we have a changing industry. You know the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Oh, now, Harry, that may be fine for dogs, but I don't think it fits the case of people. Now, remember, Moses did a tremendous amount of learning after he was 80. It wasn't until then that he got the 10 Commandments.
That was then. That was special.
I think the Bible principle still holds true. The older men can and do contribute intangibles we can't have. In addition, they still contribute to things we can.
Such as?
Well, do you remember the story of Benjamin Duggar? He was forced to retire under protest as a professor at some college when he was 71. A research laboratory hired him, and at the age of 74, he discovered aureomycin.
Isn't that the antibiotic?
That's right. But do you see what I'm getting at, Harry?
I think so. You feel that a man should be kept on for his own merits.
And that the older men have much to contribute to whatever line of endeavor they engage in.
And you're telling me to keep Pete on.
Well, it's your company, Harry, but you asked me my point of view. I can only give it to you based on the Bible.
Well, it sounds like reasonable advice. Then again, from you it usually is.
Thanks, Harry.
Come in.
Say, Mr. Goodman, I just had to talk to you about what I told you a little earlier this morning. You know, about Pete not starting up his press right away.
Yes?
Well, you see, I got to talking to Pete about yesterday, and come to find out, I hadn't locked up the form on his press sufficiently. And, well, maybe it was a good thing you checked it again. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Goodman.
Oh, don't worry, Chuck. It's all been cleared up. It has something to do with an old man by the name of Caleb.
Caleb? Funny, I was thinking of a proverb that Joe mentioned to me.
What proverb?
The splendor of old men is their gray-headedness.
Intelligence and reflection and judgment reside in old men, said the Roman statesman and orator Cicero. Thus he recognized the value of experience that Bible principles brought out more than 1,000 years before him.